Hey everyone, we've had a number of requests to talk about the core body temperature sensor, and tonight that's exactly what we're going to do. This is going to be a brief video of how I use it, how I utilize it, and how you can use it in your training as well. I will give you a little bit of a spoiler. It's a little bit different than how they use it, but we'll kind of talk about the pros and cons of both and how you can leverage both ways to kind of maximize your training here. So this is their website. This is the core body temperature. This is the core body 2 out here. So they do have a brand new version, a second version. A lot of new insights. The biggest thing that they have is the passive heat stuff. That is kind of your heat settings and your heat adaptations after you train. So they're going to combine all the Gen 1 good stuff that you know and love with some of these newer things as well to just kind of maximize everything and just kind of quantify everything. So you'll have heat strain load. We're not going to talk about all the major stuff out here, but this is what the app will look like if you use the app. You're going to have your heat adaptation score. You're going to have your heat training load for the day. You're going to have your heat zones. You're going to have your time in all of them as well. And the app will do a couple other things. Highly recommend you dive through the app and dig through that. But this is exactly what it is. This is a sensor. It goes on your body. It measures your core body temperature, your core body temperature, along with your skin temperature and a couple of other things. They're claiming a 26% performance potential loss from heat strain. So that, in better English, will mean that you have a 26% less likelihood of overheating and doing all of that stuff in the heat. 8% increase in your time trial performance in just 10 days of heat training. I don't know if that is super legit, but I will say that I have seen marketed increases across the board, whether you're a novice or whether you're at the pointy end of the spectrum. So I've seen increases across the board, and I am a true believer of this product. 2.5% increase in hemoglobin mass increase after a longer term heat adaptation training done in the research study. I can't, give specifics on that, but I, again, would probably consider that legit as well. Trusted by top athletes and coaches. You can read about that on your own time and frequently asked questions as well. So without further ado, let's dive into some personal experiences for you. So this is, again, I'm going to kind of give you some of how I use this. On their app, they're going to give you things like heat adaptation score, your heat strain index for the day, all that fun stuff, how heat adapted you are. I find that, after you get to a certain point of heat adaptation, you start to really train all this stuff. You really start to kind of focus on it. You're going to kind of max out in the app if you're really, really focusing on it. And I find that a lot of athletes that, it turns into a gamification on the app. It's great, it's cool, it's fun, but there comes a certain point where you're just, after a certain point, you're like, how do I know if I'm improving? I was going up, but now it is just kind of maintaining and staying the same. So how do you know if you are improving? We're going to go through some of the reasons that is the case. So this is the old way of doing things out here. And the old way is still great in a lot of places out here. The reason I really, really like this is because this is a quantifiable test. You can measure your improvements, you can see where you're at, and you can kind of go from there and regulate your training based off of this test. So this test, you're going to start off, this is on a bike, you're going to start training, you're going to build that body temperature to a 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, 38 degrees Celsius, and at that point, your test starts. So once you develop that, once you can go through your warm-ups, your small intervals, whatever you have to build up that body temperature there, mark that down and make this repeatable. That's going to be the big key here. You're going to be making this repeatable, and you're going to track the heart rate that you have when you start and the watts that you start. The test lasts for as long as you can maintain those watts until you get about to a 20% drop off. Once you hit that 20% drop off, your test is done. Over the course of this test, you're going to be tracking power. Of course, you're going to be tracking heart rate. The idea is to maintain that heart rate throughout, right? So as you maintain that heart rate, theoretically, your body temperature should increase. If you find that it's not increasing, your area isn't hot enough or you're not bundled up enough, right? There's too much ventilation, yada, yada, yada. Again, if you're watching this video, you probably are aware of all of that fun stuff. And the thing that this test doesn't really talk about just off the cuff here is time. So all of these metrics you're going to be keeping track of. Let's say the first time you do this test, you're going to be maybe 10 to 15 minutes. After you go through training and all that fun stuff, right? Maybe you do this 2 or 3 months later and you find that your test is about the same, but you're able to replicate this for 20 to 25 minutes. That's a 10-minute window of improvement. So you know that heat adaptation is working. You have a quantifiable measure right here. So again, this is another reason why I do like some of these older tests right here, because you can see if it's happening. You don't just rely on an app telling you like this is just you're improving, you're improving, you're improving. You can say, all right, this is how much I'm improving. This is what I need to be doing differently. So this is a great, great thing that I like. And again, I'm kind of older school. The app is really, really good. It can do a lot of really good things. I just find that this test is useful once you get to that upper echelon of heat adaptation on the app. Not knocking the app at all. I think it's very, very useful. And as we go through here, realize I have created some individual charts for myself on WKO5. Highly recommend you do the same thing as well. So this is a chart right here. It's different temperature bands and the average heart rate over the course of the days that you've selected. In this case, it's 90 days. I can compare that over the course of months, so I can compare that for 30, 60, 90 days. And I can see here, even if I just wanted to say, all right, from 38.1.01 to 38.25, body temperature. What was my average heart rate over the course of those 30 days? If the training's relatively similar, you can get a really good gauge off of things. Obviously, this has a number of pitfalls in it, but this is just an overarching, big picture moment out here. If you wanted to dive in more nitty-gritty, you can see some other things right here. The black line, a little bit hard to see, so I will kind of get you some arrows out here. The black line, you can see that this person's body temperature slowly increased over the course of the first hour of their 5-hour triathlon race. And then afterwards, it slowly drops down. This is a really, really great pacing strategy for this athlete over here. This athlete realized that in the first little bit out here, that their body temperature was going way too high. So they did back it off a little bit. They practiced some heat management strategies in order to get that body temperature down. Achieved a really great result. And that's just one aspect of the heat training out here. So that's race execution out here. If you wanted to talk about a workout over here, this athlete has a workout. This one is their body temperature is in pink out here. That's because this athlete recorded it on a Wahoo, and we can dive into some more semantics later on, but this is just a general video here. You could see it warming up for the first 30 minutes out here. Their body temperature increases to a point that's not sustainable out here. Kind of manages or maintains right here before leveling off over here. I will tell you that this section right through here was a test for them. So it was really, really important for the part leading up to the test that they dropped their body temperature, and they did, right? If they did not drop their body temperature and they let's draw a new line for you guys. If that body temperature was to theoretically rise up over here, chances are that this area of the test right here probably would not have gone as well as they wanted it to go. But because they saw some of the things that were happening with their body temperature, they actively backed off a little bit, practiced their heat management strategies. They were able to really, really, really have a great, I think this is a 5-minute test out here for them. Going into a more practical approach out here. Again, this is the black line out here. This is a kind of a sweet spot tempo ride. We're really focused on that heat management out here. This is a really straightforward one. At about the 35, 30-ish minute mark out here, you can see that their body temperature kind of flatlined out here, and it's just maintaining pretty much for the remainder of the ride out here. That is exactly by design. This athlete's kind of combining two different things in a ride to kind of maximize their time. They're maximizing their power output, obviously, right, with that tempo sustained effort over the course of, I think this is about an hour and a half, and they're also maximizing their heat management strategies. So realize you can do more than one thing in a session out here. So if we were to go to a typical Training Peaks week out here, right, this is an athlete who has a little bit of a unique schedule out here. They do play hockey, right? So that's a little bit different out here. But this is typically what you're going to find for most athletes out here. Endurance bike is a great opportunity for that, and we're just going to star the options for you to kind of think about your heat stress, heat training. So the first one is an endurance easy bike. We have an endurance run and an easy run. Realize that this is just the first of many options out here. There is loads of different strategies out here. For instance, if I was to take these things away for us, right, we could see that this athlete does have some FTP intervals out here, and then they do have some endurance mixed in after that. A great idea to think about is to encourage you to maintain your heat adaptation after you've done your intervals for a longer session right there. A lot of athletes just think about heat training in the sense that it is just for like individual sessions and you cannot focus on anything else. That is definitely not the case at all, right? So in this session on the Friday, right, this athlete has an opportunity to obviously hit their intervals right there, but that last section over there, they can keep their body temperature up and they can also get some heat adaptation after their intervals are done at a lower intensity. This is exactly why you see the professionals bringing jackets and things like that on some of their sessions, even in the summertime, right? This is exactly what they're doing. Same thing on the runs, right? You do your little VO2 max run, and you know, things will be a lot easier for you. And you can do the exact same strategy for you there. We've also developed a couple other charts out here for WKO, right? You can see that this is the heat strain index out here, and you can see hopefully that it increases and kind of drops down. And then this athlete is doing some more serious training, so you can see it's steadily rising out here. We did have a bit of a break for this athlete out here. They did have some other commitments pop up. And in a perfect world, they wouldn't have that break, but hey ho, right? In a perfect world, right, when you are building up in your season, your heat management would slowly just rise as you go. You can also focus on heat management blocks, right? The possibilities are endless for this device. I will tell you a ton of things work, so don't overthink it. Another thing that we've done out here is we developed a little chart for athletes and their FTP out here. So this athlete did a FTP, and it turned out to be run FTP. Their FTP was 300 in a 70-degree band. So we know, right, that this athlete landed about here, that 300 watts in the 70-degree area. If we do another test and it's 80 degrees out there and they come up with a 295 FTP, we know that they're about even with where they were, right? Again, hotter temperatures, you have to kind of back things down a little bit. But if we find that we do this test at 80 degrees and they are flatlining, and quotations, with an FTP of 300 again, in reality, right, I know, and hopefully you know, that their FTP is in reality higher than that 300 mark, right? So it takes some of this science, right, and you can actually make it quantifiable, and you can actually track improvement. If you do another FTP test at 90 degrees and you say, okay, we had a 300 watt, we're kind of evening out. Our athletes not really like pumped about their result. They achieved the same FTP in that 90-degree band. You can come back to them and say, hey, the last time you did this, you did it at 70 degrees. We are 20 degrees above this and we have the same FTP. That's actually really, really good. If the temperature dropped 20 degrees from this 90-degree area, you would likely experience a 10-watt bump, right off the bat. So there's a number of different ways that you can use this. One of my favorite ways to do this is uh, probably one of the like a workout just like this, right? Make it repeatable, make it actionable, right? You can see a number of things from this, and the first one is your power. What was your power output for this workout? If it's a little bit higher, right, and you see that um, your core body temperature is the same, right? That's an improvement, right? If you look at both of these things, then you look at the temperature of the day and you say, okay, it was actually 30 degrees hotter on this day than when you did it last time. Same results otherwise, you know that improvements are happening. You know that, all right? Because if it's 30 degrees hotter, chances are you're probably not putting out the same power output, probably not going to have the same core body temperature unless you've been doing some serious buildup with that. And that comes with your weekly breakdown, all right? So what I like to do, another popular strategy for me, right? If this athlete is kind of in their, if this athlete is really at the upper echelon of who they are and what they want to be, what we can do is we can say, hey, I'm going to take this endurance opportunity, this endurance run, and I'm going to really focus on heat management strategy. That means we're going to go into this work out a little bit fatigued, but that is also by design, probably if you're that athlete. Another easy thing you can do, what a lot of athletes really like to do, is they like to take their easy days and make them um, a heat management day that takes their easy days from doing just something really easy and turning it on their head. I will say I'm not a huge fan of this, but if you are a limited time athlete, this would also be something to think about. If you are running or cycling more than 3 times a week, what I would suggest you do instead is move it to your endurance days instead of your easy days, just keeping those super easy. So that is a kind of a brief overview of how I use it. If you want any more specifics or to dive in a little bit more, please feel free to reach out. Contact info is down below.